What does boundless curiosity, Navy SEALs, and a 150-year-old business have in common? That leadership is constantly evolving. On today's episode of the Grapple and Growth podcast, I had the pleasure of welcoming on Jack Shade, who has been able to coach and work with businesses, helping them scale to multi-million pounds, and is working on some fascinating projects. We delve into why you need to focus on people, not profits, why ego is essentially thrown out of the window, and why, as the Naval SEAL mantra goes, the only easy day was yesterday. Let's get into it. As entrepreneurs, we all experience challenges in our business journey. I'm Joe Testori, and the Grappling Growth podcast is my attempt at documenting my entrepreneurial journey while building my brands. I sit down with fellow entrepreneurs, understanding how they grapple with growth. I hope you find value and enjoy. Jack, welcome to the podcast. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Joe. Looking forward to the time together today.
Likewise. Jack, what does growth look like to you?
I go to personal growth first and then business growth, right? So for me, I believe that growing people, empowering our people to do the best job that they're capable of doing and allowing them to identify opportunities for us to improve makes the ultimate difference within a business, and then it allows a business to grow in all the ways that we desire to, whether that's profit or eventually the value of a business itself.
And for you, where did that perspective stem from? Was that always the case, or did you think in a different light before?
Well, I think probably as I was younger, growth was just always something that you kind of almost manhandled, so to speak. You just tried to outwork and go make it happen. And you took a lot of responsibility on yourself when you got into a leadership role. And then even as a young leader, most of us try to be the quote unquote smartest person in the room, maybe not in everything, but in whatever our responsibility is. And over time, what I started to understand was that if I could ask people questions and listen to them without listening to respond to whatever they said, but actually listening to what they thought we could do to become better, that there were a lot of great ideas that exist within companies. And now it was just simply getting everybody to be on the same side instead of feeling like they were competing with each other. And that allowed a lot of companies that I've worked with to unlock a significant amount of growth within the financials of a business.
Do you think leaders are made or born?
I think we all have certain components that might exist as far as when we're born to be a little stronger as a leader in one way or another. I think there are certain benefits that people are born with. However, I know when I look back on my journey that it took a lot of different mentors and some key people at the right time to either help train me up, coach me up, or even on occasion it's a simple comment to help you look in the mirror in a different way. So I think that leaders prove time and time again that they can evolve and that they can learn how to do it through the benefit of those people that are around them. I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you just said.
Sorry, there was a slight delay. Do you believe that anyone can become a leader?
Somebody would have to really desire to be a leader and be willing to put other people first to remain a leader for a long time. So the question was, can anybody become a leader? Yes. But for people to succeed and to be able to stay in that role is very different than simply becoming a leader. And again, I think in a lot of cases, the way that people become leaders is by being the best doer. And unfortunately, the best doer is not always the best at being a leader or a supervisor of other people.
Something really interesting that I read today, that there's a lot of people who get to a place where they've got the job, they've got the accolade, or they've got to the position they want to get to. They get the deal in and they think the job's done there. But in actuality, and I believe Jocko Willink, former Navy SEAL, says this himself, everyone believes that Buds training is the hardest thing that you go through. And he said, yes, Buds is one of the hardest things anyone can go through, but that is the start of the hard work. And I love one of the Navy SEAL mantras, the only easy day was yesterday. And it's just having that mentality and mindset of no matter where you're at, when the clock strikes midnight and it's a new day and it's a new dawn, it doesn't matter what you've done before. And you consistently have to show up. And we were talking about football, but you see this time and again where there's a manager who has a really successful period for a certain period of time. Maybe let's take Jose Mourinho, and then the game, the sport evolves, and the manager who was winning 15, 20 years ago, he's not winning today for whatever reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, relationships evolve as well. And I love the fact that you were quoting Jocko, right? His first book was Extreme Ownership, and then he's come out with a few since then and has a very popular podcast. I love his mindset on leadership. I have a son who's a Marine, and I appreciate what any of our military goes through to be able to qualify to be in that role and then to live that life. And I think that when you talk about sport, one of the great things about sport is it has a scoreboard, and you know whether you're being successful or not ultimately in what that outcome is. And when you talked about Jose Mourinho, right, I think we see it, whether it's in European football or American football, there are certain coaches or managers, when they're there for an extended period of time, do they evolve with where the sport is headed? Do they evolve in how they communicate to a next generation of players? And then also, does their message, if it continues to be what it's always been, does that start to fall flat and just not resonate with the players as well? So, yeah, there's a lot of pieces that absolutely go into it. And for some of the truly great ones, you see them be able to adjust and work. I mean, I think of somebody like Pep. He's been every place he's gone. He's been able to figure it out. And then even when he does have a down year, it's not as down as most other organizations would have, and it doesn't take him long. And he, I think, adjusts. He's got a foundational belief, but I think he adjusts key components and maybe sees that a little bit before some of the other managers might.
Well, begrudgingly, he's a little bit too successful right now for my liking. But with that said, so we referenced a few people there. Who are, just in your peripheral vision, who are a few leaders that you've looked at throughout your lifetime? Maybe people who have been in the public limelight that you've really gravitated towards because of their character, their demeanor, the way how they just champion people.
Well, I'm going to go really old school. It's been kind of top of mind for me here recently. I coached high school girls basketball for 25 seasons. It's been more than 10 years since I coached, and I'm about to take a volunteer role for our local university. And John Wooden was somebody that won championship after championship after championship at UCLA. But when you hear any of his players speak, they don't speak about the winning first. It's always about the relationship, the expectation. Bill Walton is one of his best known players. Bill Walton's gone on to be a commentator in the NBA for a number of years. And Bill Walton's a unique individual, but he and John Wooden had such a great relationship. And I think about the way that John Wooden lifted people up. And I actually got a chance to talk to somebody yesterday who worked with a coach that worked under John Wooden, who now has impacted his life. And this gentleman's gone on to not only be a coach, but now be an athletic director at a university and have an impact on thousands of people's lives. So, I think about the cascading effect that an individual like a John Wooden can make in a lifetime. And of course, in the business world, there are a lot of others, but he's the one that just came top of mind for me.
Any other people that spring to mind as well?
What's that?
Are there any other people that spring to mind?
Well, certainly, and it's it's interesting because one, for me, when we talk about American football, I think there's an individual. Mike Tomlin is a great leader of men. He has players who love to go play for him, but I think he struggled over the last few years to do some of what we talked about. Is he has not adopted to what is more of a current way. So he still has people who love him. He has some great veterans who are potential Hall of Famers, likely Hall of Famers, who are now playing for his team. They all speak so highly about him, but they struggle to execute on certain things. And again, they're playing a game of football that's from 10 or 15 years ago. And if they don't adjust, then it doesn't matter how great of a leader you are if you can't help adjust to what the expectations in the workplace, the business world, or in this place, sport are. So, somebody like him absolutely comes to mind. The other side of that is Andy Reid. So Andy Reid was a great coach. He had a lot of success for the Philadelphia Eagles. It ran its course. He got fired there. I think he was there for 10 or 12 years, and then gets hired by the Kansas City Chiefs, and now he's adopting regularly. He makes the game fun. It almost looks like they just go make stuff up at practice, and then he goes, yeah, that worked. Let's go ahead and try it in a game. And you can just see that his players are having fun. And as you're talking about begrudgingly, Kansas City has a lot of success. They've won Super Bowls, and they'll continue to win because of the leadership that Andy Reid brings into what he does with his team.
What American football team do you support?
Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin. And when we talk about leadership, I know for anybody that's not a Steeler fan, here's a stat for anybody who's not an American fan or American football fan. Since 1969, in 56 years, they've had 3 head coaches.
It's impressive.
And that goes into the Rooney family. The Rooney family has owned the Steelers since 1933. They're on a 3rd generation of ownership. But for them, they don't have the knee-jerk reaction of making decisions quickly and terminating people over one bad season. Although, actually, for Tomlin, I believe he's in year 18, and he's never had a losing season. So we would see what that would look like. But, leadership matters. And, again, I think it comes down from the very top and in any sport, and it translates back to business. If you're paying attention to your people and then also listening to them on the things that need to happen to get better, then that's your best chance of success and continued success.
Those are some really profound examples, and I personally don't follow American football. I maybe know 1 or 2 names, but it's never been a thing that I've jumped into. But then looping that back in to business, how do you feel, and this is sometimes difficult to answer for yourself because you don't want to seem as though you're egotistical or arrogant, but taking a bird's eye view, that the qualities and traits that you look to adopt, how do you think you deploy them amongst your team and the people you lead?
Well, for us, one of our core values is boundless curiosity. And I think it speaks to a little bit of what I pointed to earlier, is remembering that you're never going to be perfect as human beings. We won't be. And knowing that the world continues to change. As a matter of fact, there's a quote that I think almost everybody's heard at one point or another in their life, is the quote-unquote definition of an insanity is to continue to do things over and over again and expect a different outcome. Well, the way the world's moving today, I heard this a couple of years ago, the new definition is to continue to do things the same way and expect the same outcome. Because the world's changing so much that if you're doing the same things now that you were doing 5 or 10 years ago and you're expecting the same outcome, you're probably not getting the same outcome.
Why do you think that's the case?
The world around us moves. Everything's changing, right? So the expectation of the consumer is different. If what you did before was cold calling or even cold email marketing, an email that you used years ago wouldn't land in the market today. Advertising has changed in how it works today. So it just comes back to an organization needing to understand what's happening within their environment, the biggest impact, when you think about it, I worked for one of the first internet service providers in the United States. I was part of the sales team when that first launched. The internet wasn't even there when I started my career. So the internet changed everything, and it made everything different. And then email made everything different. Well, now AI is changing faster than everything that we've ever experienced in the past from a business perspective. And how you leverage AI is going to make a huge difference within where you move forward. And, coming back to the whole boundless curiosity component, if you looked at something related to AI 90 days ago, maybe you tried a voice version of AI and you thought, no, it just doesn't sound like a human being. Go listen to it today, and you're probably going to find yourself to be surprised. And I know I've heard a lot of people in the marketplace say that people are going to lose their jobs to AI. The quote that I heard, and I think I resonate with this more, is people aren't going to necessarily lose their job to AI. They're going to lose their jobs to people who know how to use AI.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The concept you spoke about right at the start, boundless curiosity, never heard it before, can kind of read between the lines. What's your definition of boundless curiosity?
Just don't assume that you know the right answer walking into a conversation. When you start to ask questions, can you reflect on not just what you're hearing, but can you even ask the follow-up question, and I'll ask this often, is what do you mean by that? I do a lot of work using different behavioral styles, and there are thousands of different assessments that are out in the marketplace for behavioral styles. And the thing about behavioral styles is they kind of put people into typically 4 quadrants, and then there are gray areas or versions of that. But understanding that when I ask you a question, I could ask a group of people individually all the same question, and they won't all perceive it in the same way. So now those different individuals, let's say I've got 10 different people that all hear that question, and then they all give me answers, and those answers are all slightly different, but I need to now understand what they meant within that answer, because that allows me to understand maybe what they heard me ask that might not have been what I meant it to be. So that whole boundless curiosity component is, yes, you have to get to the point where you make a decision, but are you willing to hear points of view that could absolutely be contrary to your own? And you asked me to reflect on this a little bit, and I'll actually take it into working with a coaching client. I had an executive coming to a boardroom, and everybody was in person, and I was virtual as the coach. And he said, I want to share this idea that Jack came up with. And I kind of smiled, and I just said his name. And he looked up at the screen. He said, okay, fine. I want to share an idea that Jack and I came up with together. And I said, well, before he shares this with you, I want you to think of 2 things. Number 1, do I have the historical experience of your business to be able to come up with this idea? And number 2, do I have the engineering experience to come up with this idea? And the answer to both was absolutely not. For me, it's just asking the questions to help unlock from somebody who does have that history and that experience to come up with a very different idea that the company really hadn't perceived or saw as an opportunity in the marketplace before. And this comes back to what we were talking about. This is a company that's 150 plus years old, and now they have a new project and a new product in the marketplace that makes a significant difference for their business. So yeah, it's just tying that boundless curiosity component into helping somebody evolve, because the world's not the same as it was.
Well, what I found time and again is the most inquisitive, successful people that I've spoken to on this podcast, that I've worked with directly, they found this knack, and this is something that I've really tried to soak in, is they've removed as much ego as possible, and these are people who, in my opinion, are 10, 100 times more successful than I am, but then they're listening to me when it comes down to what I'm doing, if this is just a work capacity. And then it's interesting because I'll speak to people who, speaking just very bluntly, who might be at the same level as I am or below, in the sense that they're just starting their business, and they'll say, I know how to do this. And it often amazes me that I think, wow, you've got the most to learn out of the wide circumference of people who I've met, yet you believe you're the ones who know that you've mastered everything. And maybe that's where, maybe it's a process, it's just a journey, and it comes down to emotional intelligence and age and wisdom and life experience, where you don't know what you don't know. And then as time goes on and evolves, you realize, actually, I have the experts in one domain. And for instance, you know 100 times more about American football than I do yet. And I won't use the football example because I know you know your football stuff, but there's a sport out there that I'm sure I know emphatically more than you do about it. And that's just because you've put your focus there, I've put my focus there. But in a work capacity, it's weird that that there's so much friction in the ego. Maybe it comes down to age and people feeling as though they need to challenge themselves. Do you feel that that's something you experienced in your younger years at the start of your career, where maybe there was friction, people wanted to vie for the same position, so that they want to prove themselves, they want to challenge themselves to you?
Well, it was me. I mean, that was, and part of it, we all develop habits for whatever reasons as we're being raised. And one of the things that I had as a habit was, when somebody said something to me, my default response was, I know. And didn't even know that that was actually what I was always saying, because it wasn't always what I thought, but it was just the words that somebody else would hear. And you were asking about people making an impact earlier, and there's a gentleman named Chris that specifically pops out for me, and his name always kind of comes to mind because he was a blue collar kind of producer in a business that I was in. He was very consistent, very reliable, had a great amount of respect for him, and I loved the fact that he was willing to tell me, Jack, we all see that you're going to be really good at this. We all see that you understand a lot of information, but we don't need to hear that all the time. And I was caught off guard by it. I said, well, I appreciate you saying that. Tell me more. And he was the one that told me, anytime somebody says something to you, your answer is, I know that. And for me, that makes a big difference moving forward, is to have somebody, regardless of what their title is, regardless of who they are, who's willing to have that conversation again, so you can hold that mirror up and say, oh, okay, that's truly who I am. That's not who I want to be. And this goes back to your question earlier about, can anybody become a leader, and then who can stay in that role? A lot of people to get to leadership were extremely successful what they did. And to your point, if you continue to just tell people how to do things, and I call it staying in fix-it mode. I think far too many leaders are in fix-it mode all the time, and the longer they're in fix-it mode, people will feel like they're micromanaged, that they're not respected, that you don't trust their knowledge or their wisdom, whatever those types of things might be, and that's eventually going to create friction within the organization. So, yeah, it all resonates. And I appreciate you asking the question.
That's so well summarized. And my dad would quite often, when I was younger, say a very common phrase to me. He would say, shut up and listen. And look, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And that means, and I'm sure these are things you've said to your sons as well, but these are the things that you don't realize, and you're trying to get or you'd say, but, and I don't want to hit the but, and this is it, and just listen. And I think it's one of those things, I don't want to say father time, but as you get older, as you mature is probably the best word for it, you start to self-reflect, and you realize, actually, less is more. And in order to learn information, you need to absorb the information and then be able to process it and then feedback and execute. And if you're the one in the room, and I remember I commonly made this mistake in my own business, we would do our weekly team calls, and I'd be leading these team calls, and I would be talking for the majority of the time. And then it's only as you evolve and you think, actually, this isn't a contribution. This might as well be a lecture. This might as well be us at university, and I'm saying, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. Go do your homework, come back to me. Whereas if we made it collaborative, I'm sure the sum of all parts would have been exponentially higher and greater than it was at that time.
Absolutely. Well, as you're speaking, it all ties back, and I know I've got some faith components behind myself, and right, when you think about how Jesus approached conversation, he would either ask a question or tell a story. And right, for somebody who had all the knowledge for the history of the world and for the future of the world, and that was his component, was he was going to ask people questions, or he was going to tell a story to help them be able to understand from who they were and what their perspective in the world was at that time. The whole 2 ears and 1 mouth absolutely resonates. There are other leaders that comment that the most successful person is the one who will speak the least amount when you're in meetings or whatever it might be. So that comes back to the commentary at the very beginning: empower other people to go do the things that they need to be able to do, and just trust that you've hired the right people, they've got the right skill set, and just let them succeed. And ultimately makes you look really good as a leader. Some of the best ideas that my team's ever come up with were, I had no clue that we were going to go in that direction, and it was nothing that I would have known, but ended up looking really good.
I was recommended this book by, actually, he was a former Navy SEAL himself, and we spoke, just asked him for a piece of advice about growing my business, and he just said, who, not how. It's not about how to do something. Find the right who's within the environment and get them to do what you need them to do, because they're going to be better than you. It's going to allow you to focus on your domain expertise, championing what you're really good at. And again, it's just going to increase the sum of all the parts that you have to hand. And I remember this was actually recently, I was messaging a team member, and there was a problem, and my natural default was to give them the solution. So I was like, okay, are we going to do? And then I remember I typed this message out, and I thought, actually, pull back. And I just said, okay, how do you think we can solve this? And I thought, these are the things. And you've got all of these monkeys on your backs when you're running a business, you're playing sport or whatever. And it's, if you're taking on everyone else's problems as a leader, how do you address the bigger picture, the actual vision, the strategy that you need to actually adopt? You can't take on other people's problems. It's about sharing that load and not trying to solve everyone else's silos and their issues. And he came back with a great response, but I had to take that step back as opposed to telling him how I thought it should be done, and just let him manage it the way how he thought it was best. And I had the trust in him to do that, but it was just one of those things that I had to mentally retract and speak to myself about there.
Yeah, you hit on a number of different areas. Part of it, within my coaching methodology, I ultimately want delegation and accountability to be owned by the performer and not by the leader. And it's amazing what happens when that actually occurs within an organization. Have you heard of an author named Patrick Lencioni?
I haven't, no. Tell me more.
He's got a book called The Ideal Team Player, and he talks about recruiting for humble, hungry, smart. And the smart's not just IQ, it's EQ. And there's a process to it. And then he's got a lot of other great leadership books. I believe he's more than a dozen of them now. The cascading of communication from an executive and all these different types of things. But another one, you hit on something earlier when you give this answer and then you say, but what got you here won't get you there. And Marshall Goldsmith has a book, and it has the 20 habits that many of us might have in our speaking patterns. And whatever you said before the but disqualifies all of, you might have been agreeing with a team member or some commentary that they shared or whatever it might be, and you go through that to make it sound good, and then you say but, that immediately terminates all of that.
You invalidate everything, don't you?
And Mark Hawk and Michael Hawk, the two of the founders, and Aaron Boggs, my current business partner, one of the things we went through at a previous business was the entire leadership team spent a significant amount of time in those components because we were growing so substantially that the whole concept of what got you here won't get you there. And then again, trying to hold each other accountable to those components as we all continue to grow as individuals.
It's such an evolution, and what I realize, the longer I stay in the game of entrepreneurship and business and just curiosity, I just love that ethos, that concept of just always realizing that I know so little, and I think having conversations like these give me so many opportunities to just humble myself continuously, which is a blessing. Then you've got the word behind you. I'm grateful for this. It's an opportunity that I have that builds and compounds. I'm curious, just talking about Loud Collective, I know that your slogan is your growth engine starts here. Talking about your own growth engine and how you guys grew, what would you attribute most of your growth to?
The people. And right, so Aaron and I founded Infinite CXO just over 2 years ago. And what we recognized, or what we believed, was that traditional consulting, just showing up and telling people where everything's wrong, just isn't a fit in today's marketplace. We believed that the fractional executive space is fractured. It's primarily solopreneurs. And if there is a business that's providing that service, they're singular in discipline in most cases. So you've got a CFO company or a CMO company. So we wanted to remodel what that looked like. And we built the back end first. We brought together some great people that are now the managing partners of Loud Collective. We had a couple opportunities with Loud Capital where Loud had some either relationships or portfolio companies that needed leadership. And we recognize that there are a lot of early stage or startup types of companies, even smaller companies, $5 to $50 million in revenue, where they could really expedite their growth if they had a stronger senior leader within their team. So for us, putting that roster of people together helped us be able to then go make that difference in the marketplace. So what Loud Capital saw was that we could make that huge difference within a couple of companies, move them much faster to market, created just a different mindset. In many of these cases, you've got a subject matter expert who had a great service or a product, could be patented product as well, but they weren't business people. They didn't know how to run their business. So by applying one or many of our CXOs, and now Flex Execs is the term that we trademarked, we saw how this would come together. So Loud Capital then acquired Infinite CXO. Infinite CXO is still kind of the focus of my coaching methodology, but for Loud, we know that we can make a huge difference within a business, and now we're adding the capital component behind it. Right, we've got Loud Ventures is focused primarily on therapeutics in the healthcare space, but we're looking at other investment partners who can help small businesses get out of this forever hamster wheel, so to speak. So you've got an early stage company, they're struggling with growth, they need more capital, they can't find the capital because their leadership team is incomplete. So the investors want to invest the money with their current leadership team. They need additional leaders, but they can't afford to go hire the additional leadership team because they don't have the funding available. And now for us, we can really kind of be at this focal point, and it comes back to we want to be that trusted advisor. We want to know that when we start to speak to a small business owner, what you think your primary need is, we want to validate that with you. We want to go on that journey with you. And if we were just that external consultant who showed up and said, all these things are broken, go fix it, might not get to the depth of one of our recent examples where they thought their need was marketing or operations, but actually their tech was really off and their data was bad and they needed a lot of help there. So plugging in a CDO, for example, a chief data officer, might be that first thing that helps them then create the foundation for the rest of their business to grow in the way that they need to.
Do you quite often see a common pattern where people say their issue is X, maybe capital, I need more money, I need more capital, but in actuality, the issue is that is absolutely not your issue. It's you don't have operations set up correctly, or you haven't scaled enough of a marketing channel here. Now you're going to look at a new opportunity, because I personally see that with a lot of clients we work with. They haven't even tapped out their total addressable market on one platform, but they're looking at something new as opposed to getting better at that one thing they're already doing.
Absolutely, and we strive to do that for ourselves every day. Our president, Jason Skidmore, is doing a great job of that for us internally. And as you hit on some of these key components, a lot of companies are willing to invest in marketing or revenue, sales growth. And for a couple of the manufacturing clients that I've worked with, they've more than doubled their revenue within 2 years, and very little of it was due to revenue, the sales part. It was how the team that was quoting and generating opportunities was bringing the opportunities internally, and then even when you had a win, how did the business development team communicate with the engineers who communicated with operations? And then did you get quality involved at the very beginning of it? Because you'd go through this entire build and then quality would go, we can't ship that. That's not going to work. So you end up spending all this time doing things over and over again because the internal components, the operation pieces of the organization aren't there. You have a lot of times where companies either have already invested in technology or they are starting to invest in technology, but the executive team who made the decision is just buying it and putting it in place, but they haven't gotten buy-in from their team. Their team doesn't understand why they're doing the new technology. You've got so many people who just don't want to change. They're thinking what we did before was good enough. Why are we doing this now? So the new technology doesn't create acceleration. It hits the brakes for a lot of companies. It creates friction. And being able to work through that entire process, right? So, as you know, business is complex, people are complex. For us, we just want to show up alongside of a current business owner and be able to utilize the experience that we have and know that because we've become this house of wisdom, we can be CEO, we can be a chief of staff or an advisor to the entire C-suite, we can influence sales, marketing, finance, HR, operations, tech, and who you start to engage with may not be the person that's working with you 90 days from now, because they recognize, oh, you don't need me, you need this. And then to your point, what we try to do with any client that we work with is identify, are you hitting the benchmarks for your industry and the expectations within a business? And how are those impacting your profit? And how are those impacting your valuation of your business? Even if you're not looking to sell today, if you're running a business, you should have an idea of what the value of your business is. And when we can point to what gaps currently exist that would impact that, now you can start to see the value in having your finance structure being done the right way, or a true CHRO, a chief human resources, or a chief people officer who's structuring the entire organization in a better way so you're hitting certain benchmarks. And love the fact that we're able to do that for companies in a lot of different industries, and working with whether they're a portfolio company of one of our funds or a company that's coming to us from the outside world. It's always a lot of fun, and this goes back to the boundless curiosity, because we get to experience so many different things. We're never going to think we know it all.
Jack, it's been a pleasure. Where can people find you, and what's next for you?
Anybody can find me either through Loud Collective or Infinite CXO. My email is easy. It's first initial last name, jshade@loudco.com. I just mentioned I've coached high school girls basketball for a long time. I'm looking forward to, I know it's in a volunteer role, but as a varsity assistant for a local university. I'm working with a couple different clients and some very cool and interesting types of things that are out there in the marketplace. There's an app called Life's Thoughts that we're doing a complete rebuild on, that I'm excited about what that'll be and where we'll come to the market with that here very soon. And I continue to enjoy the life that I've been blessed with my family. So, Joe, I appreciate you having me on today.
Thank you, Jack. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, sir.